Good morning. Today our group will be talking about communication at work. What is communication all about? Why is it important? The communication process, barriers, and the global implications. Our game is pass the message. Basically, what we want to imply here is that understanding the whole text will lead them in winning the game. Again, our topic for today is communication at work. Communication is really necessary because without proper communication, we cannot be able to achieve the goals set, especially in the corporate world. Hi, I am Angelica Rivera and I'll be talking about the communication process, direction of communication, organizational communication, and the group plan. So, what is communication? According to Webster Dictionary, communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news. It must include both the transfer and the understanding of meaning. Hindi pwede na si transfer lang, hindi rin naman pwede na understanding of meaning lang, obviously. Both parties must understand what they impart from one another. If there is no understanding, there is no imparting of ideas or what we call the feedback from one another. Here is the communication process. As you can see or follow the diagram given below, the sender encodes the message first. Then it passes through the channels or what we call the medium. Channels can be a formal channel or an informal channel, which I will be discussing later on. Then, the message is decoded by the receiver. There are determinants whether the message is sent successfully or not. A feedback from the receiver to check whether the message was transferred successfully. Then the noise, which I will also be discussing later on, a communication barrier that makes the message unsuccessfully sent. A while ago, we discussed about the channel, or maybe called medium in other terms. There are two kinds of channels, the formal channel and the informal channel. Formal channels, these are established by the organizations and transmit messages that are related to the professional activities of the members. Example can be an email sent to you by your boss because he gives you a task to work on. Then, the informal channels, these are very spontaneous, determined by an individual. Example of this is when your friend texted you on how you are doing these days. Or maybe someone asked you out for lunch. As we proceed to the direction of communication, there are three kinds: the downward communication, the upward communication, and the lateral communication. So in the downward communication, it is used to assign goals, provide instructions, explains policy and procedures, point out problems that need attention, and offer feedback. Example of this is when your bosses in your respective OJTs gives you instructions on how to do your task. Then he checks on your work and give a feedback about it. This is more of the managers that give instructions to their subordinates. And this is the boss to member approach. While upward communication is the opposite. It is used to provide feedback to higher ups, inform them towards goals, and relay current problems. So for example, you are working under the supervision of your supervisor in your respective OJTs, diba? So as your supervisors explain how to do the task that you are assigned into, you provide feedback with the task that you are assigned to. Maybe you'll tell to your boss, "Sir, I think we have a problem here." Then syempre, he needs to address then the problem. So that's upward communication. It is most likely the member to boss approach. Lastly is the lateral communication. This is when the communications occur between the members of a work group, members at the same level in a separate group, or any other horizontally equivalent workers. While downward and upward communication is vertical, horizontal naman is lateral communication. For example, you are talking to your co-interns in your respective OJTs, then same as with your bosses talking to their co-bosses. This is member to member or managers to managers approach. we go to the organizational communication. So these are simply the small group networks wherein how messages were sent from one member to another. So there are three kinds, the most common ones of the small group networks, which is the chain, the wheel, and all channel. So first is the chain. It follows the formal chain of command. So this network approximates the communication channels in a rigid three-level organization. Yun yung sinasabi nila na if you did something wrong, your boss might scold you. Then his boss will scold him, and so on and so forth. So this chain is like there's a CEO who's giving a command to his board of directors, then from the directors to the managers, then from the managers to the respective subordinates, both upward and downward. Ganun yung flow, kumbaga. Then, second is the wheel. It relies on a central figure to act as the consult for all group communication. It stimulates the communication network you would find on a team with a strong leader. So possible example of this is when your family is running a small-scale business. Maybe your dad acts as an owner, then mag-assign siya ng rules to your family. O ikaw, mommy, you hold the finances. O ikaw, anak, ikaw bahala sa marketing. O ikaw, bunso, ikaw bahala sa inventory. And so on and so forth. So then in the corporate world, maybe let's say that you are 8 in a group having the same position or role. Then the boss is the one who's giving the directions. And lastly, the all-channel network. It permits group members to actively communicate with each other. It's often characterized in practice by self-managed teams in which group members are free to contribute and no one person takes a leadership role. So basic example of this is here at school. If there are group works, some groups prefer it na walang leader, that everyone must be aware on what tasks that they must do and ang need nila to accomplish. Next is the grapevine. These are basically the rumors or gossips in a good manner naman in communication network in a group or an organization. So for example, uy, maganda daw yung job opening sa company na ito, sabi ni ganito. So, syempre, mahihikayat na rin siya na mag-apply. Another example, sabi ni boss, lilipat daw yung department natin sa ibang floor. Now, that gives the worker the anxiety or curiosity. Why is that so? So, I'll pass the mic to Carla and she will continue on the discussion about the modes of communication.
Hi, I'm Carla Sardona and I will be talking about the modes of communication, communication channels, and barriers of communication.
The modes of communication, interpersonal communication. First is the oral communication. This is a primary mean of conveying messages. Examples are speeches, formal one-on-one, group discussions, and informal rumor mill or grapevine. Grapevine was discussed earlier. Second is written communication. Any method that conveys written words or symbols. Examples are letters, email, instant messaging, text messaging, social media, and blogs. The third mode of communication is nonverbal communication. These are body movements, the intonations or emphasis we give to words, facial expressions, and the physical distance between the sender and the receiver. For the communication channel, what are the criteria? First is that it handles the multiple cues simultaneously. Second is to facilitate rapid feedback. And third is be very personal. As we can see in Exhibit 11 to 6, the information richness and communication channels, it will start from the formal report bulletins, and then pre-recorded speeches, online discussion groups and groupware, live speeches, video conferences. Memos, letters, electronic mail, voicemail, telephone conversations, and face-to-face conversations. At the left side, you will see the low channel richness, and at the right side is the high channel richness. So, the high channel richness are the video conferences and the face-to-face conversation. The low channel richness is the formal reports, bulletins, memos, and letters. For the persuasive communication, we have automatic processing and controlled processing. In automatic processing, this is a relatively superficial consideration of evidence and information making use of heuristics. Second is controlled processing, a detailed consideration of evidence and information relying on facts, figures, and logic. Controlled processing requires effort and energy. Types of processing an audience will use. First is the interest level. Second is the prior knowledge. Interest level is one of the best predictors of whether people will use an automatic or controlled process for reacting to a persuasive message is their level of interest in it. Next is the prior knowledge. It means that they have already thought through various arguments for or against a specific course of action and therefore won't readily change their position unless very good, thoughtful reasons or logical reasons are provided. If an informed audience, it is harder to persuade. Barriers of effective communication. What are the barriers of effective communication? First is the personality. Personality is the need for cognition, a personality trait of individuals who are most likely to be persuaded by evidence and facts. Those who are lower in need for cognition are more likely to use automatic processing strategies relying on intuition and emotion to guide their evaluation of persuasive messages. Next is message characteristics. Lean on communication channels with little opportunity for users to interact with the content of the message and tend to encourage automatic processing. Next barrier of effective communication is filtering. Filtering refers to a sender's purposely manipulating information so the receiver will see it more favorably. Example is a manager who tells his boss what he feels. The boss wants to hear is filtering information. Next is selective perception. Selective perception, receivers in the communication process selectively see and hear based on their needs, motivations, experience, background, and other personal characteristics. For the continuation of the barriers of effective communication, Cheska Cruz will discuss it.
So I will be talking about the barriers of effective communications, global implications, and cultural context.
Information overload. Individuals have a finite capacity for processing data. When the information we have to work with exceeds our processing capacity, the result is information overload. The next one is emotions. Emotions may interpret the same message differently when you're angry or distraught than when you're happy. Like for example, individuals in positive moods are more confident about their opinions after reading a persuasive message, so well-crafted arguments have stronger impacts on their opinions. The next is language. Language words means different things to different people. Age and context are two of the biggest factors that influence such differences. For example, jargons. Those new to corporate lingo may find acronyms such as KPI or Key Performance Indicators. These words such as deliverables, it means verifiable outcomes of a project. and phrases such as get the low hanging fruit or deal with easiest parts first. The next one is silence. Silence defined as an absence of information. For example, employees who are silent about information issues may also experience psychological stress. Or, employee silence means managers lack information about ongoing operational problems. Communication apprehensions, also called social anxiety. People experience acute tensions and anxiety in oral communication, written communication, or both. They may find it extremely difficult to talk with others face to face and extremely anxious when they have to use the phone, relying on memos or emails when a phone call would be faster and more appropriate. The next is lying. Lying is an outright misrepresentation of information. The frequency of lying and the difficulty in detecting liars makes this an especially stronger barrier to effective communication in organization. Global implications is the cross-cultural factors clearly create the potential for increased communication problems. There are four types of cultural barriers. First are barriers caused by semantics. Words mean different things to different people, particularly people from different national cultures. The second barriers are caused by word connotations. Words imply different things in different languages. The third one is barriers caused by tone differences. In some cultures, language is formal, in others, it's informal. And the tone changes depending on the context. Fourth are differences in tolerance for conflict and methods for resolving conflicts. Individuals from individualist cultures tend to be more comfortable with direct conflicts and will make the source of their disagreements overt. Collectivists are more likely to acknowledge conflict only implicitly and avoid emotionally charged disputes. Cultural context. There are two types of cultural context. These are high context and low context. High context cultures that rely heavily on nonverbal and subtle situational cues in communication. Low context cultures that rely heavily on words to convey meaning on communication. In high context cultures such as China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam, these are people rely heavily on nonverbal and subtle situational cues in communicating with others, and a person's official status, place in society, and reputation carry considerable weight. In low cultures, people from Europe, North America reflect their low context cultures. They rely eventually or essentially on spoken and written words to convey meaning. Body language and formal titles are secondary. And these are the steps to reduce misinterpretations. First is to know yourself. Second is foster a climate of mutual respect, fairness, and democracy. Learn the cultural context of each person. When in doubt, listen. State facts, not your interpretations. Consider the other's viewpoint. And the last is proactively maintain the identity of the group. So we have questions for you. Why communication is important in an organization? So for us, just to summarize, communication promotes motivation. Communication is a source of information. Communication also plays a crucial role in altering individuals' attitude. Communication also helps in socializing, and communication also assists in controlling process. That will be all. Thank you.